Today we're going to talk about Oaklynn Cemetery in Edgewater, Florida. Edgewater is the city south of New Smyrna Beach, the name of a town you may recognize from some of my other videos, specifically about the Turnbull plantation of Smyrna, where the immigrants, the indentured laborers from the Mediterranean and most especially Minorca were brought here to Florida to work the fields for Turnbull, growing indigo, corn, rice, and such. This is Oaklynn Cemetery. It sits at 635 Air Park Road. You might also know New Smyrna Beach as the shark bite capital of the world. It's the southeastern portion of Volusia County. Volusia is the county of NASCAR and the world's most famous beach. The county south of Volusia is Brevard. Brevard is where NASA and SpaceX are. I just did a video series about pioneer and abandoned cemeteries in Brevard County. Oaklynn originally sits on 6 acres, or so early records indicate, though specifics of burials and logistics have all been lost. Realize this is a black cemetery. They're not important. They pave over them. They build parks over them. They build freeways through them and over them. They build housing projects on top of them. In Clearwater, they built a high school on top of them. They dig them up with backhoes. This is the fate of black cemeteries, not only in Florida. What you see here now is a labor of love of all races, families, and volunteers across this county. Oaklynn presently sits on private property, which was posted, but I trespassed anyway. I have come to learn in my research following that I could have received a very hefty trespass fine. The owner and descendants of the owner of the property and the descendants of these people take the sacredness of this ground very seriously. So perhaps the ancestors knew my intention and were keeping the frequencies safe for me. Only descendants and approved volunteers are allowed on the property. I am happy that I risked the arrest. More people need to know about this place. If you are of indigenous or African American, Niji, Moorish, whatever you want to call it, descent in Volusia County or northern Brevard County, I hope that you see this. And I hope that you do your part to help. Only a little over an acre has been reclaimed. Technically, there are 6. And they are finding the burials by looking for them and cutting down the trees and shrub by hand to find them. The cemetery sits a good 2 hours or more away from me, or I assure you, if this were in my county, I would be involved. In 2019, WFTV Channel 9 promoted an investigation with questions to the city and the county and the landowner. That prompted a state investigation. In the transcript from that interview, a volunteer spoke of a team of volunteers and family members pulling out a palmetto. All of this work is done by hand, you see. You will see cutting away done. It's all done by hand. And this is why when a group were pulling out a palmetto and a cabbage palm. They watched a jawbone with teeth pull up with its roots, and then the skull lay beneath. This all has to be done by hand. It appears that the state of Florida cannot force a landowner's hand on maintenance if the cemetery isn't licensed, and this one never was. The current owner is John Massey of Massey Ranch Airport, a coastal fly-in community. It's next door. In fact, I had to park just in front on the grass in front of the property. Obviously, there's no parking. The driveway next to it would lead you into the fly-in. He's aware that the graves have been desecrated for years for jewelry, artifacts, and even bones to sell. And this is why his stringency on the no trespassing. No one has been buried here since the 60s. Massey's in favor of relocating all the coffins, but needs permission from every descendant to do so. Who would be responsible for this, however? This is a very costly endeavor. That part has not been made clear. By records, we are to understand that this burial site was established in 1926 by L.E. Mahon on 5 acres. West of the city limits, it was a black cemetery for black burials of Volusia at a time when cemeteries were also segregated. The property was purchased by Massey's father in the late 40s on a tax deed, being part of many of the parcels and in arrears on taxes. A sad story common to many of these segregated cemeteries I've come to learn about in Florida, but beyond Florida as well. It's in the taxes, the property taxes that so many of these black cemeteries have lost out. Massey knew his purchase included a cemetery that family members were taking 100% responsibility for at the time. Over time, however, one of the things that segregation did is it allowed black families to live where white families were living. And that took the need for these segregated communities to be as they are. So the people with means, the doctors, the professionals, moved out because they could. And all that were left in those original black segregated communities were the people who couldn't afford to live back in. During segregation, the doctor and the lawyer might be living next to the drug dealer and the pimp. Once the doctors and the lawyers moved out of the black communities, then the drug dealers and the pimps started running the black communities. And so over time, with this demographic, this family hands-on care ceased. A Miss Sarah Miller formed an advocate association for descendants and is now up to them to maintain this property, even though the law states that it's up to the property owner. The state does retain the power to step in at any time and clear up a place or sanction a lien on it so it can be reimbursed for its costs. Current family members do not approve or support Massey's suggestion to move the bodies. I can name 3 cemeteries I've done videos about alone that prove that this never ends well, this moving. That's Monument Cemetery in Philadelphia, where Temple University's recross fields spreads across the bodies that were not moved. Mount Herman Cemetery in Jacksonville, a place that has become very, very dear to my heart, which lay beneath the Emmett Reed Park and still reveals the Fagan family plot, now kept cleared away in the overgrowth, as a cold slap in the face to the city and its concepts of urban renewal. Apparently, when they were digging the pool for this Emmett Reed Park, which the city was building in this neighborhood that had once been a thriving Black community, but then was falling into disrepair due to the segregation demographics I was just talking about. They started finding bones, and then they started looking at old records and realized that a cemetery was there. A cemetery that had been essentially wiped off the map to put in I-95. And then there is Zion Cemetery, lying under the Robles Park housing project in Tampa. The Friends of Oaklynn Cemetery are looking for volunteers and have a Facebook page with close to 1,000 followers. Wreaths across America have been alerted and lay wreaths for Christmas, as you see. I was here shortly after the holiday time. The wreaths were still there. Also, the military stones look new because clearly, since the graves have been reclaimed, families have contacted the VA and have received their stones. Earlier in my film, you would have seen a sign that indicates how many military graves had been found. When I was there, they had found 10. The findagrave.com website, which I use quite a bit, notes 80 identified internments. I will read their names now. Eliot Evans, Alderman, 1917 to 1946. Hattie Ethel Seals, Alderman, 1905 to 1968. John Lamar, Alderman, 1904 to 1969. O.J. Anderson, 1865 to 1946. Susan Ashley, 1868 to 1950. Genevieve Brannan, 1911 to 1938. William Brisden, 1873 to 1950. Annie M. Brow, unknown birth, 1945. Theodore R. Brown, 1906 to 1941. Willie Brown, 1891 to 1949. Nettie P. Bryant, 1897 to 1934. Jim Burgess, 1898 to 1932. Willie Cook, 1884 to 1928. Ollie Hadley Custard, unknown dates. B.B.D., unknown dates. Pat D., 1927 to 1929. Mamie Davis, 1930 to 1886. She is in the crypt that has been broken into, and apparently Mamie and her husband were moved, fortunately. Reginald H. DeVoe, 1897 to unknown death. Annie Bell Turner Franklin, 1903 to 1958. George Franklin, 1900 to 1933. That's unfortunate. Mattie Franklin, 1869 to 1940. Anne L. Gay, 1901 to 1961. Janie Goodson, unknown birth to 1936. James Gray, 1913 to 1965. Sam McGray, 1886 to 1948. Nathan Green, 1896 to 1940. Florence Harris, 1901 to 1948. Andrew Hartfield, 1897 to 1948. Wayman Herring, 1878 to 1932. Catherine Hutchinson, 1836 to 1839. Veronica Lynn Genke, 1958 to 1959. Annie Bell Johnson, 1902 to 1958. L. V. Johnson, 1892 to 1940. Robert Jones, 1882 to 1962. Sylvester Knight, 1891 to 1949. Kirks Lambright, 1893 to 1947. Daughter Lambright, birth and death unknown. Lee Lamons, 1902 to 1948. Ed Lumpkin, 1872 to 1948. D. George Thomas McDaniel, birth and date unknown. Gertrude Mills McDonald, birth and date unknown. George Felix McDonald, 1889 to 1950. Duncan McCrae, birth and death unknown. Ellis Meeks, 1859 to 1945. Jesse Meeks, 1886 to 1964. Shedrick Meeks Sr., 1887 to 1950. George Albert Mazzell, to 1887 to 1939. An unknown Moton family member, birth and date unknown. Baby Murphy, 1955. Thomas Murphy, unknown birth, to 1951. Jesse Hudson Nelson, 1925 to 1959. Norris, birth and date unknown. Melissa Orton, unknown birth, to 1947. Maddie Quiller, 1866 to 1949. Archie Robinson, birth and death unknown. Julia Robertson, birth and death unknown. Ben Robinson, 1919 to 1946. Theodore R. Rogers, 1926 to 1944. Alice Lavina Sanders, 1883 to 1947. Mary Jane Scott, 1891 to 1962. Mary E. Seals, 1866 to 1950. William Seals, birth and death unknown. Lizzie Simpson, 1891 to 1946. There were 3 members of the Slayton family, birth and death unknown. Delia Smith, 1886 to 1956. Jasper Stanley, 1890 to 1960. Mary L. Stanley, 1891 to 1949. Nina Stanley, unknown birth, to 1966. Ruby Thompson, the 22nd of May to the 12th to December. Toomer Thompson, birth and death unknown. Nancy, birth and death unknown. Eleanor Meeks Walden, 1903 to 1927. Henry Walden, Jr., 1900 to unknown death. George Stephen Williams, 1906 to unknown death, and Lazarus Wright, 1907 to 1964. You will see that there were ravens in the trees above. When I got to the back of the cemetery, to what is the extent of the clear line, the ravens had a lot to say. This is both an immense tragedy and a heartwarming labor of love. It's been rediscovered. It's being reclaimed. The families and the communities are getting involved, and not just Black folk. Plain old white folk like me, too, who take an interest in these things. Because once you pass, you're everybody's ancestor. You're everybody's guardian. They watch over us. We should be watching over them. As I said, if I still lived in Volusia County, I would be actively involved in this project, especially since I've started studying the art and science of headstone cleaning, and it is an art and science. Marble is very sensitive to cleaning abrasions, but also this work, coming from an archaeological background, my degree is in archaeology. This is my wheelhouse. Anyway, I hope this struck a chord. I hope that you will share this, actually, to raise more awareness of it. If not just for people, regardless of their race or melanation in Volusia County, this is going on all over the country. Segregated cemeteries have been completely desecrated, abandoned, paved over, built over. And the larger matter at hand then is the indigenous cemeteries that were often used to build good Catholic cemeteries on top of, right? Because they were just heathens. I just visited one the other day, produced a lot of shorts from it, a hilltop cemetery. How is there a hill 2 blocks from the Atlantic Ocean? Oh, was it a shell mound, as we call it? An Indian burial mound? It's not the only one in Volusia County. There are at least 3 that I can think of. Cemeteries blocks from the beach that are on hills. Interesting. I will shut up and let you watch. And I thank you. And if nothing else, I hope this makes you angry enough to pay attention to what's going on in your community, in your city, in your county. This is happening all over. And you know what? It isn't just Black cemeteries. There are family cemeteries all over. Pioneers in your city, in your county. People that worked and built the city you live in, built the roads, built the infrastructure, worked on the railroads. Black and white and Asian and everything else. Pioneers, the landowners who started the county, their cemeteries are in complete disrepair. I can name 3 in Jacksonville alone. There are roads named after these people and these families, but their cemeteries are thigh-high in weeds. So, thank you to my fellow Taphophiles. And I'm going to give a shout out to some new friends who also like wandering around cemeteries. They live in the Pacific Northwest. Tombstone Whisperers. Tombstone Whispers with a Z at the end. If you like beautiful, beautiful cemetery photography, not the morbid stuff that I go after, but beautiful cemetery photography, check out Tombstone Whispers, my friends up in the Oregon, Washington area. Thank you guys for your beautiful work, and thank all of you for following me around. And remember, it's our job as the living to protect the dead.